Hi everyone, and welcome to the third in our three-part series looking at education, employment, and looking at these two topics from a slightly different perspective. I'm delighted after the first two parts where we focused firstly on the employer's point of view. We welcomed Ben, Charlotte, Chris and Phil. They spoke a lot about the importance of the community and their desire to engage with education, which was a fantastic message to hear. In the second part, we then spoke to some educational providers and an enterprise advisor to find out what it was that they wanted. And the best thing was, it was exactly the same things. It was how can employers support with skills and the importance of community. In this part, I'm delighted to say we're going to be celebrating what's already been done and what works really, really well. Got some fantastic guests who are going to join us, first of all, for an individual one-to-one, and then we're going to come back for a group question and answer at the end. And hopefully, again, we're going to see how successful things have been already. And we're also going to look at a little bit about what our wish list is for the future. So without me talking anymore, you know who I am. I'm Tom Cliff from Track. We support autistic people to access employment. But today's not about me. It's about welcoming our guests who've been doing fantastic things within the world of education and employment. So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Laura. Laura, if you can just introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and who you work for.
Laura Giddings. I'm the STEM Education Manager at RS Components based in Corby.
So, from a point of view, one of the things that's come up during our conversations so far is about having that common language. Now, I talk about SEN and STEM quite a lot. For those people that haven't heard of that, what exactly does STEM mean, and what does it involve?
STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths. It's one of the largest volunteer organisations in the UK. The recent STEM Learning Impact Report stated there was over 34,000 ambassadors in the UK alone, made up of volunteers from over 5,100 employers. And we are very fortunate to be one of those employers.
And from that point of view, I was amazed. RS Components was a name I'd heard in local press, in local articles, but actually what the company does is there's a huge breadth of kind of work that takes place at RS Components.
Yes, so obviously we are a business, we are a supplier. So we supply to 32 countries around the world. Our main audience are engineers. As our business is 80 years old, our plan is to ensure that we have another 80 years of potential supplier and customer. So we work very, very hard to engage and inspire the next generation in all varieties of science, technology, engineering and mathematics subjects. Not only in school, but we also look to link those into industry experts and partners that we work very closely with.
And Ben, in part one, Ben Thomas from All Things Business, he spoke very highly of one of the particular activities that you do. And he was saying the looks on the children's faces when they got to see things in real life was fascinating. So perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit more about that particular activity that you do.
Yes, so that activity that Ben was referring to was our first STEM Fest, STEM Festival that we held on site in Corby. It was a 3-day event where we created it to include workshops, talks, hands-on experiences, an exhibition area. We had over 500 students from primary and secondary schools in the Northamptonshire region attend on the Thursday and Friday. They were then guided around by our very own STEM ambassadors. We were very fortunate to actually have one of our leaders from the business, Mike England, be one of our student leaders for the day. So he was very fortunate to take a group of 30 primary school children around. So the students were really engaged to understand more about how we as a business support education through elements of technology and engineering. So the whole day was made up to ensure that they could learn, and it was all aligned to their curriculum, and they were able to reflect on what they did that day by using workbooks that we had created for them as well.
And from that point of view, you mentioned, you know, we're talking about education and employment, and the fact that actually they don't really need to be two separate categories. Obviously, for events like that, they're targeted at schools. The schools come in and visit. But that opportunity for young people to see an actual workplace and experience the sights, the sounds, the smells is massively important. And as we are kind of looking at things from a different perspective, I know this year, obviously, COVID-19's taken over a lot of our plans, but you actually have plans to incorporate a specific day for students with additional needs.
We did. Our plan was to extend STEM Fest to be 4 days. One day was going to be specific around students with special education needs and disabilities. I was working with colleagues within the education sector, and we were looking to create a day specifically aligned to those students to enable that they could get exactly the same experience and inspiration as the students from the other schools did. We want to show that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. There are some amazing roles out there, and we want to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to want to do those roles, be them science, technology, engineering based, business based, marketing based. There's a lot of inclusion that they could look to be part of.
And that point you make there about inclusivity and not necessarily having to change everything. It can just be the smallest of environmental factors that we can change, and particularly within science, technology, engineering, and maths. Actually, sometimes the neurodiverse brain presents kind of, you know, a fantastic creative opportunity for individuals and a different perspective. We've seen companies such as Microsoft embracing that, but it's great to know that within Northamptonshire that companies like RS Components really do encourage people to have, you know, a different perspective.
Definitely. We were very fortunate to appoint a global director for diversity and inclusion for RS Components. Her name's Jessica Chu. She's come from a very experienced background across banking and different businesses. So she's brought a lot of knowledge and understanding to see how, as a business, we can look to do more for people currently looking for work who are classed as neurodiverse, and also to engage with that younger audience to ensure that their transference from education into business is one of amazing support and inspiration, that they should feel as aspirational about their future as many other young people are today.
And in terms of looking at kind of different groups of individuals as well, that I was stunned. I was a business studies teacher at school. I came out of education, but the breadth of careers that can be involved with science-based subjects. And I think we all start with perhaps a plan at school that the old school method was, you know, pick your career and that's yours for life. But actually now there's a focus on skills, which is absolutely crucial for people, you know, for young people and educators to understand that actually that variety of skills is going to be crucial in the future workplace.
Massively. There's a big emphasis on us asking young people, what do you want to do when you're older? So we have to focus on how we communicate with young people instead of asking them what they want to do, which sounds very limiting in the roles that are out there, whether they feel comfortable to want to do those roles. We should start asking them, what do they want to impact? What do they want to change in the future? Think of an industry and think of how they can look to work towards that industry. There's a big stat at the moment that the UK industry government advise, which is they're spending over £1.5 billion a year on helping close that shortfall of skilled workers. Skilled workers being those who have an interest and a passion in the likes of STEM subjects. In 2018, they estimated that we're on 173,000 as a shortfall, which obviously year on year, the less students who get into STEM subjects, that shortfall is getting bigger and bigger. So there has to be more being done from businesses to help close that gap between education and business across all the different levels. And yeah, it's just one part of many in a big machine that can help drive change.
And I know we could talk about this subject all day. We have done before, but just kind of one final point before we welcome in our next guest. You know, for context of people watching this film at a later date, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, there's been lots of changes, but one of the things which kind of it just gave me so much enthusiasm was a LinkedIn post you made about a competition which had been run. I looked through the ideas and was stunned. You know, these were young people. If you could just tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's something which needs to be shared with as wider audience as possible.
Massively. I was unfortunately put on furlough earlier this year with everything that was going on. I was then fortunate to be approached by Nesta, who run the Longitude Explorer Prize. So the Longitude Explorer Prize is an entrepreneurial competition to engage 11 to 16-year-olds. So the competition this year was to get young people to design an app using artificial intelligence and get them to say how this would change the world. So I mentored one of two teams. And there was 40 teams in total, so they're now on to the final stages. And they were designing apps around reading and writing, as well as looking at how we can encourage our eating and dietary habits. The one app you're referring to specifically, I was very fortunate to mentor that team. They were looking at designing an app which would help young people with dyslexia overcome the barriers that they face in education and at home. So their element of designing an app using an algorithm which allowed them to search online, though the word wouldn't necessarily be spelled correctly, it would actually then return the results based on what they were searching, based on their habits, based on their interests. But then it would then appear to them in a dyslexic friendly font, just so they can then ensure that that young person could continue with their education, continue with their tasks, and not look to fall behind if they weren't receiving the support from a teacher or an assistant or even at home. So these are versions of apps that students see there's a problem, or they see there's an issue in the market. And this was something that they were really, really passionate about. And I was very fortunate actually to work with this team. And I wish them the best of luck in the finals this week. So voting finishes on the 3rd of July. So if you go to Longitude Explorer Prize, you can then get a chance to read about all the 40 teams that are there and find out all the kind of different applications they were looking to design, with a view that going forward, one of them would hopefully be funded by Nesta, a government-based initiative, to help drive that change and impact. So super inspiring to see extremely enthusiastic young people looking to make that change before they've even left school.
Absolutely, and it was thoroughly inspiring to see those. So Laura, a huge thanks for joining us. We're going to say goodbye to you now, but we'll welcome you back shortly for the group discussion. So thank you, Laura. And if you do get an opportunity, obviously time permitting, go and look at the ideas. I was taken aback by the breadth of ideas, and actually the creativity is something which businesses, we often talk about partnerships and think of what are the long-term gains perhaps, but even in the short term, at the moment, I know people are reaching out and looking for creative solutions. Those ideas could be sat with the young people. These are the people that engage with them. So a huge thank you to Laura for joining us. I'm now delighted to welcome our next guest to the stream, which is Christy. So Christy, a huge thank you for joining us. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you work.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So my name is Christy Jones, and I'm the Health and Safety Manager at Wincanton for Sainsbury's and in Pineham in Northampton. I've been in health and safety around 14 years now, and work in the logistics sector, but based at the warehouse in Pineham.
Now, we talk about logistics. I was somebody, as I've already pointed out, in education. Logistics is a long word, but actually one where a lot of people might not be aware of the sort of opportunities within the industry. And I think that's something which Wincanton, it's been fantastic working with them, because they're so incredibly keen to engage not only with young individuals at school, but also with different groups of individuals as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wincanton have been really good. I mean, this isn't really within anybody's remit at work. We don't have anybody that's particularly employed to deal with this. But what Wincanton have allowed me to do as a health and safety manager, it kind of sits nicely for me, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. So we've been to several different schools in the county, including secondary and primary. And in primary schools, we mainly focus on the road safety element of things. So we'll teach the young children a lot about lorry safety, road safety, blind spots, and get them from a very, very young age to understand how dangerous the roads can be. And we don't focus so much on engagement of potential careers. And then in a secondary school setting, we work with them on their careers days and do activities and engagement activities with them, as well as explain to them about the potential of careers in the logistics sector. I think most people don't realise that in Northampton, 1 in 7 people do actually work in the logistics sector. And even if people are aware what logistics is, which many aren't, they then just think it's about lorries on the road or even packing boxes in a warehouse. And we kind of trying to educate them so that they're aware that there's much more than just packing boxes or driving a lorry. Not that there's anything wrong with those, because they're really good careers, but you know, we just try and engage with them and explain about management positions, transport planning, HR, health and safety, finance. All of those careers are required within a large organisation in the logistics sector.
Yeah, and there, you know, you talk about that engagement, and it's great to hear companies such as Wincanton, you know, encouraging people from a very early age to consider, you know, like you say, there's no hard sell for careers and you have to come and work for us, but actually it does young people a huge amount of good to hear from actual providers and employers of the future, because I was stunned the first time I came into to see you in the workplace. You see these huge buildings on the outskirts of town normally, but actually what goes on inside them, it's almost magic in the timings of things coming out and the planning which goes into them. And that, again, we keep coming back to this, the need for young people to have a variety of skills. This isn't just the physical skills. This is actually, like you say, the planning is so precise that goes into those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in our site in particular, we have close on 700 people that work there. So yeah, again, like you said, you drive past this huge, really what looks like just a massive shed and have no idea what goes on inside that warehouse. In ours in particular, we have 3 separate chambers of different temperatures. So we have an ambient chamber that is holding the stock, such as what you put in your food cupboard, cereal, pet food, those sort of things, anything like that. And then we have a produce chamber, and that holds our fruit and veg that literally comes in often from abroad, Turkey, Spain, similar type countries, and it's in our warehouse and back out again on a lorry within 12 hours, so it doesn't sit with us very long. And that's the produce chamber, which is slightly cooler, and then we have what is known as our chill chamber, which holds all of our products that go in your fridge and that need to be kept at a certain temperature, and that can be quite a shock when people walk into our chill chamber and they realize quite how cold it is to work in there. It's very fast paced, so people don't have an opportunity to get cold, but we kind of understood that for people who are perhaps going into work, or certainly into a warehouse environment for the first time, we knew that could be a showstopper for them.
Yeah, and we were delighted to be able to work with yourselves and ACS Recruitment to create employment opportunities for people who perhaps struggled gaining employment elsewhere. And it was a process which I think, again, everything we do is a learning curve. There's this difference between education and employment. I'm still learning every day. But if you could just talk us through about the process that we went through and the benefits which that's brought you as a business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a learning curve, but actually, luckily, we didn't make that many mistakes. It kind of all worked out really well. So initially, we're talking a year ago now, we met with yourself and Chris at ACS and Alina that got involved. I'd initially seen you do your talk at Pets at Home and kind of went back to my site and said, maybe we could offer an employment opportunity to somebody with autism and see how that went. Luckily, my manager is really supportive and agreed. So we had that first meeting with yourselves and we kind of just set some scenes and said, this is what we think might work. Shall we try it? Obviously, I've never had any involvement with anybody with autism and have not grown up with anybody. So it was completely new to me and I needed some guidance, but I was really, really keen and passionate on making it work if we could. So with your help, Chris and Alina, we decided that we would walk you around the site, show you the potential jobs that we could offer colleagues, take you into the chambers to give you an idea of the temperatures. And between Alina and myself, she produced a guide, a Welcome to Wincanton guide, which basically walked somebody through what to expect when they came to our site. So we were conscious that people could be intimidated by certain things, as in it's very noisy in the chamber, people drop pallets on the floor, there's a lot of activity, so it's congested. And the biggest shock is the temperature in the chill chamber. So we wanted to make sure that we got it right, really. So after producing the guide, you kind of put some colleagues forward to us, some candidates forward, and actually what we did for them is, instead of taking them through a normal interview process, we brought them in, we walked them through the whole of the warehouse for them to understand the environment, and then once they went back and agreed that they quite liked the idea of working there, we then kind of brought them back for a really informal interview. It was a really nice, relaxed chat and get to know them rather than your standard interview techniques. And initially we brought 3 colleagues on, and it, and they all enjoyed it at the start. It wasn't for everybody, but they all gave it a go. And I'm just absolutely delighted to say that one of the candidates is still here, and that's nearly a year, and he's absolutely loving it, and he just brings so much value to the role in the warehouse. And the managers often say to me, you know what, I'd like a whole team of him. He's just doing such a great job.
And actually, there you've summarized everything that we talk about. It's such small environmental changes. We're not focusing on teaching an individual to how to cope in a workplace. We're saying to the workplace, actually, here are the small environmental changes you can make, and all of a sudden he thrives in that environment, and that brings benefits all round. Because I think people are sometimes nervous about talking about, when it's education and employment, how do employers benefit, but actually this is sort of it's mutually beneficial. It benefits everyone involved, from people getting to work, but also on a business case, you're getting good employees from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he does a great job. And what we were very careful to do was not to wrap him in cotton wool. We appreciated he needed to be treated slightly differently, in that we did a one-to-one induction with him. So on the day, it was not in a group of 8 or 10, which we would normally do. And I spoke to the trainer and just explained, what we would like to do. And, he didn't have any special treatment other than we were just aware that he was, he had autism, and we just took our time with him. But like I said, without wrapping him in cotton wool, we kind of just let him get on with it and come to us if he had any problems. But within a few weeks, he'd made friends, he'd got to grips with anything. He has no qualms in going and finding a manager if something is out of the ordinary. And we have what's called grid controllers in the chill chamber, and they basically ensure that everything is running to time in the chambers, in the grids, and this candidate in particular is just a godsend to them. He's so meticulous and so wants everything to be perfect and right all the time. He takes care. He doesn't just throw things in the cage. He literally does exactly what we want, and just seems to really thrive on it. He loves this environment. He works part-time for us, but he's quite keen to add extra hours on if he can, so which is good news.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. It's great to hear there, and thank you again for your support and engagement so far. We'll welcome you back very, very shortly for the group discussion. And as you can see there, people have questions, and our key role is starting the conversations, because people might have concerns about specific disabilities or different abilities, but there is support out there, and our signposting sometimes is, we're not the experts here, let's talk to somebody else. Because when you actually start to ask the questions, we can sort answers, and we can make the barriers kind of be removed. So it's now time to welcome our final guest. So Deb, I'm delighted to welcome you. If you'd just like to say who you are and who you work for, please.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, so Deb Foster. I work for the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership, so SEMLEP for short. I'm an enterprise coordinator. My role involves working with Christys Enterprise Company and coordinating a local group of the Enterprise Advisor Network, with the ultimate aim of supporting schools to prepare students for work.
Now, you talk about that ultimate aim of I think what we're all trying to achieve is to create paid employment opportunities for individuals with different abilities, and it's a long process. There's no quick fix, but actually there's a lot of good work going on, and actually the networks you talk about, I'm delighted to be an enterprise advisor, and having those individuals to facilitate that engagement is really starting to make an impact now.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so the network involves various layers, if you like. So we've got fabulous volunteers like yourself who are enterprise advisors. And enterprise advisors are usually senior people from business in local areas. So Tom, you know, you're running track, but we've got managers and directors, other people that run their own companies. And they bring a great deal of experience and perspective, which is so important to the schools. So you will have this one-to-one relationship with the school, and you support them to make sure that the careers program that they're offering for their students, I guess, is fit for purpose, and that students are having every opportunity to find out about local opportunities available, but also to develop those employability skills. But in addition to yourself, so enterprise advisors, the network is wider, and we also do quite a lot of connections with businesses. So we've got smaller businesses that maybe can't commit the time to have that one-to-one relationship, but they want to deliver an activity or they want to get involved with something. So it could be CV preparation or speed networking or workplace visit or something. And very fortunate previously to work with Christy to arrange an open door for students to go into Wincanton. The various ways that people can get involved. And then within the network, there's also all the different schools. So I personally work with the mainstream schools in Milton Keynes, but then all the special education needs and alternate provision schools throughout SEMLEP. And the best practice that goes on, some phenomenal examples of engagement with employers and businesses, and everyone gets to share them. So we have regular meetings, breakfast networking sessions where people share what's going really well. And if there are any challenges, then as a group, we try to find solutions to them.
Yeah, and you taught there. I mean, I love the meetings because it's great to hear what's going on, and actually that desire to share that good practice as well, I think is one of the major developments moving forward, because we talked there about SEN schools, kind of different providers, but actually the key bit from me as an enterprise advisor is being able to tailor my support to the specific school I support, and then making it for the specific individuals as well, because often you hear about employability, you hear about careers, and people assume 40 hours a week, 7 days a week, one career for the next 30 years, which isn't the case. You know, for some individuals that we work with, work might be an hour a week volunteering, or it could be, you know, a part-time role like Christys has described. And actually, I think now, by having the conversations with education providers and employers, we're helping to create a much broader range of opportunities for individuals.
Yeah, yes, very much so. Yeah, so it is, as you say, those schools that are knowing what their students are interested in. So many schools now start to do annual surveys with their students to find out what industry they might be interested in, or jobs. And I think it was interesting that Laura said earlier, you know, we stopped asking, what do you want to do? There's so much pressure around that, and that also indicates that that's it is fixed. But by exploring what they're interested in or areas that they might want to know more about, we can tailor the responses to them. So I've got some schools where we have lists of students that might be interested in engineering, or some might be interested in childcare or psychology, and then we're able to target it. So we've had some specific events for the sixth form students where on one occasion we got 4 law companies to come in. Another occasion it was looking at finance, so we got banks. Who else did we get in? Accountants. We got an economic analyst, and the students were able just to have very informal chats about what that job involved and what it might mean for me. So yeah, I think that opportunity to develop that personal relationship and to see what the students need is really valuable, because there isn't a one size fits all. And we are seeing schools move away from the big assembly because everyone's going to find out about this, because you might not engage everybody. So that more specialized, targeted, individual approach is a lot more successful and has a lot more impact.
And you spoke about some of the great work which is going on across the SEMLEP region, and we could talk for hours about specific projects going on. But to put you on the spot just a tiny little bit, is there any particular examples that you've seen there which you think it'll be great to share? Because the whole point of these videos is to start conversations and to make people aware of opportunities, that of things that have already happened. And we know there's so much. So is there just one or two maybe particular examples that you can think of?
Yeah. Okay, so an example from mainstream school. So I don't suppose it matters if I mention the school, but working with Shenley Brook End School in Milton Keynes, and their head teacher is the named careers leader. I think that straight away says that careers is a priority for the school. And they have, over the past couple of years, got great connections. So the schools have to meet something called the Gatsby benchmarks, which get banded around. But basically, it's a framework. But if schools are meeting all of the benchmarks, then it shows that they're offering a really broad program that benefits all the students. But one of those benchmarks is benchmark 4, which asks the school, please link all of your curriculum to careers. So what is the relevance of trigonometry, and why are we learning to analyse poetry? So those sorts of things. And you often get those questions asked. I worked in a mainstream school for many years, and those are the questions that students ask me. Miss, have you ever used algebra since you left school? But it's trying to make those connections and bring subjects to life. So the Shenley do this really well, and every subject teacher or every department had a link. So for instance, their art students worked with John Lewis to create a design for a cushion. The media department worked with a local company to help them update their literature for apprenticeship recruitment, because it wasn't really being successful and they weren't getting many candidates. So they talked to young people themselves. I said, what do we need to say? How can we attract you into this? And working together, they got a really successful campaign. And then also with maths, they work with a construction company, so with year 8 students, so we're talking 12 to 13-year-olds. It was a matter of, here's a professional building brief. You've got £12 million and you're going to build a modular leisure facility within your school grounds. So for me, that is, every subject is being brought to life and the students are understanding why it's going to be important for them going forward. So that's the mainstream. And I guess the special education needs sector, there's so much great work, and you're talking about working, you know, that individual approach. It's very much more pronounced, I guess, in the SEND sector. But many of the schools have fabulous shops or cafes, and I suppose just use the Beehive. So with Northgate School, they have a pre-loved shop. They offer an event service where the students will do a lot of the setting up and catering. They also have a fabulous cafes and the students work in there. So lots of opportunities for the students to gain experience in different sectors which might interest them. So yeah, it would be great to see lots more of those sorts of activities taking place.
And like you say there, with the different activities, we've heard some huge company names mentioned there as well. But there's also the opportunities, especially within SEN schools, for the much smaller independent employers, maybe the very small building companies, the plasterers, the trades. And there's still a huge role that if people are able to spare time to come and get involved, it would be fantastic for them to do that, because again, it helps. Maybe it might only meet the need of one student, but that's one student whose life you can change, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and those little, you know, we had a campaign a while ago through SEMLA, but it was a national thing through the Careers and Enterprise Company. It was called Give an Hour, and it can be as little as that. So sometimes, you know, organisations, individuals might think, well, it's a massive commitment, I can't do this. But if you could give an hour, there will be activities within various schools locally that would really welcome your support. And it could be chatting to a student about your career. What have you done, and what advice might you give? We also do, you know, the speed networking is really useful. So very quick conversations about what's your job, what do you enjoy the most. But actually, just good enough tangent slightly. I had a conversation yesterday with an enterprise advisor who's working with an alternate provision, and she said, what we do really well in the network is to prepare students to get the job. But there's also a piece to support students once they've got the job, because you know, now you're in the post. So what support is there? So giving them the information and the skills maybe that they need to be resilient in the workplace could also be useful. But I guess that's going on a bit further than the Enterprise Advisor Network's original aims.
But no, and I think that's exactly what we're looking for. We talk about getting employment, but sustaining it is just as important. So Deb, I'd like to say a huge thank you for joining us. So I'm going to say goodbye to you very, very quickly, because you're coming back more or less straight over. But thank you, Deb. And yeah, you know, just from my point of view, if anyone is interested in finding out more details, I will share the details in the chat facility on this video. But get in contact with Deb. It's a hugely, hugely rewarding role. So again, you know, I'm sat here it makes me smile hearing all these good things which are going on, and the commitment from companies, different organisations to work together. And what we're going to do now is welcome everyone back so we can have a little bit of a group discussion. So we'll add everyone back into the studio. So welcome back, everyone. I think just you know, it's open for a group discussion now, really. But just a point that Deb made there, that the links between education and employment don't need to be about perhaps creating that first job role. It can be an ongoing, mutually beneficial relationship, because Christy, as you said, you perhaps didn't know about autism to start with, but actually we've been able to support you there and link you up with different things. So actually this isn't just about short-term employability, it's about that much longer term benefits to both employers and education.
I'll jump in and add a bit more to that, if that's all right, Tom. I think, you know, what we do with young people makes a massive impact. That goes without saying. We get nothing but good feedback from when we go out and work with young people. I think some campaigns and some strategies do sometimes forget the people behind those young people. So the schools themselves, the teachers. How can we ensure that not only are we inspiring their young people, how can we help inspire their educators? How can we keep that relationship going with schools? And there is more and more being done with that. So elements that we was talking about from, I think, the first and the second episode of this with Ben Thomas and Matt Coleman, is how can employers and also individual people be more available to schools, be that through a volunteer base of doing assemblies or going in as enterprise advisors, but also considering taking up roles of becoming governors. I recently became a governor for a local primary school, and it was very strange. A lot of people have got a lot of perception of what a governor is and what they do, which is quite different to what they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's one of those opportunities that if many people aren't as confident to work with young people, and it's not that scary, trust me. If you're not that confident to work with a young person but want to work with education, this is another role that other people can look to consider. That is just as important to a school and to a trust to have your knowledge as part of those boards, which can then enable strategies and opportunities to be explored in more detail.
Absolutely, and again, it's that key word we come back to a few times, of opportunities for people. We can't change the world straight away, but actually, I mean, Deb, you've seen with getting companies involved. Some might be reluctant to start with, but it's usually just a case of not understanding entirely what the role is, as much as anything. As Laura's just said there, for being a governor, you know, what you see on a job description and what it actually involves can be very different. But Deb, that engagement, we are seeing an increase in the uptake from businesses across our region.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more people. There is that caution though. There are some people that are not sure what it's going to look like, and we talk about businesses and schools speaking very different languages. But I think our role, the network, and then people like yourself and Laura and Christy, organisations that have connected well with students, I think there's a lot of learning there that can be shared. And that message that actually it doesn't have to be labour intensive, it doesn't have to be this mammoth task, that we can share examples of what's worked well with other schools and other businesses, and just facilitate that and sort of introduce you to the school and have meetings with the companies themselves to find out exactly what it is, what's their aim of getting involved, and what do they want to achieve, and what might be the best vehicle and the way to do that.
And Christy, you mentioned about Wincanton, the senior level of support. You know, we were delighted to come in and have a conversation, and very, very quickly it became apparent that there was a desire to learn. And I think that is got to be one of the key factors, that where people listen, there's the opportunity to learn. And like you say, we don't get everything perfect. Every role isn't for every individual, but that commitment is absolutely massive to helping people.
Yeah, for me, I think at the beginning there was an element of, and still ongoing now, but there's just an element of raising awareness of you know, employability of people out there, that generally probably wouldn't succeed in a normal interview. They just sent a CV and attended their interview. There's a possibility they might not get the job just because perhaps their experience doesn't come through on a CV or in their interview. And what we learned very quickly is when we started to share with our colleagues and our managers what we were trying to do by working with yourself and ACS, I was just astonished at the amount of people that quietly came up to me and said, oh, my son's autistic, or my dad's got this, or my mum's got this. So many people said it. And then so many people said, I'll help you if you want. Do you want me to mentor? Do you want me to keep an eye out? Do you want me to look out for them? And those sort of things. So actually, it was just one of those lovely moments where it was like, why has it taken us this long to really get to this stage where we're looking at employing somebody with autism any differently to employing somebody without? And we've made extremely minute changes. We haven't had to go and spend a lot of money. The biggest thing has been awareness of autism, and just getting people to share their experiences with us. And I still have people now a year on since employing the three candidates that will say to me, oh, I went and spoke to so and so today, he's loving it, he's having a great time. And that's such a really nice feeling that it's been a success story, and more than anything, it means we would do it again, we would try it again. We've opened it up to other sites as well have come to us now and said, oh, I believe you've done this, can you give us some guidance on how you did it? Certainly from that point of view, in the fact that we've been to the schools in Northampton, primary and secondary, and shared our knowledge, that has now kind of really resonated with Wincanton, and they have all over the country now started going to schools to share their information. We do a great event where we take about 6 different managers or 6 different people from Wincanton to the schools. We've done this at probably 3 different schools so far in Northampton, and we do an event where each person will go into a room with, say, 15, 20 students and talk about their particular career with them for just 10 minutes. That's all. And I mean, for me in particular, I play a game with them, ask them to guess my job. And, it's really quite funny. And students of 13 to 16 are quite engaged, especially if they think I'm going to talk to them about a gory accident that's happened. That's usually their preference. But it's really nice to come away from a school and think we've changed that perception of where I genuinely believe that people were informed in the past of, if you don't do well at school, you're going to end up picking in a warehouse. And actually, we need to change that perception, because the opportunities that come from picking in a warehouse are massive. And that's what leads to great managers. They often started, picking in a warehouse. So a driver, I think people are absolutely shocked when they realise how much a professional LGV driver can earn. It's not a rubbish job by any means. And like we said, it's also just, there might be students who are really love their maths and their figures and everything, and they don't realise that in logistics, there's a finance team, there's a finance clerk, a finance manager, a commercial manager. There's lots of opportunities that are within the logistics industry that I think that students just aren't aware of.
Absolutely, and kind of one of your answers there is what I just wanted to look at in the next part is, it genuinely does make me really happy to hear what we've heard today, because there's opportunities for people. We're not saying what people can't do. And I guess my question to you really is, what would you like to see happen next? What's your sort of wish list for the future in terms of employment, education, engagement along that process? So Laura, if I could perhaps put you on the spot first of what would you like to see happen next? Because we've heard the great work that you're doing, but how can we make it even better? Because I think that's the key thing. We're always learning.
Yeah. So to kind of enhance a bit about what we do and where we think we can go with it. So not only do we have 200 STEM ambassadors within our business based across UK and Ireland, we're also looking at expanding that globally. So I'm working with heads of different regions all around the world to get them to look at their STEM engagement program and look to kind of match, if not I keep challenging them to do better than us. So that's one element that we're looking to evolve. Something else that we do to engage with students is, and teachers, we're creating lesson plans, so free resources for schools. I'm working with a variety of teachers all the time. We're literally about to line up the next 3 themes that we're working on that will be released over the next academic year. So again, an evolution of that needs to suit with the current climate. So we're looking at how we can create lesson plans that are not only targeting primary and secondary school students, also how can we ensure that the education curriculum and support is there for students with SEND. And we're also looking at adding knowledge organisers into that to ensure that that relates back to the different subjects within the schools. And yeah, we're making it cross-curricular, we're making it fun and exciting. And the evolution of those plans will be hybrid learning through classroom-based interaction, but also with students potentially working or studying from home for some foreseeable future. How can we ensure that they see that purpose? And again, the evolution going forward with that would be, again, taking these plans and regionalising them to our colleagues around the world to use that and spread the word with new ideas and themes. And obviously one of the last big things that we do over at RS is we do a lot of events and exhibitions. But obviously with all the exhibition industry being kind of shut down until the end of the year at least, we're looking and exploring new ways that we can still reach and engage with young people through virtual opportunities. Obviously we've already mentioned one where I was a mentor. There's loads of opportunities that our ambassadors and our colleagues can look to be involved with, and this is something that every employer and every business person can look to do as well. So it's looking at how we adapt our engagement techniques to suit the new era of exhibition and events. And yeah, there's many more that we're working on in the pipeline. So things for when we get people to engage with our business. Work experience was a big thing for us. Obviously, we can't actually physically have anyone on site, and I think Christy and Deb are very mindful of that as well. So it's how do we take that experience and put it into a virtual capacity? There are some amazing proof of concepts already over the last couple of months, which have been managed to put together in a very, very short period of time. Again, that's a program that I'm looking at right now to see how we can still work with young students in a virtual capacity to bring them closer to business and setting them a project and a task and getting to meet people from the business. Mindful they won't be in the office, but they'll still get exactly the same support that they would. So there's many things going on, and it's just how we can look to include and support many others, not only in our business and industry, but everyone in our community as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, and again, like you say, so many opportunities. There's challenges at the moment. For every challenge, there's an opportunity somewhere. So over to you, Deb. Really, what would your wish list for the future be?
Wow. I guess it's following on from that Gatsby benchmark. 4 out of all the 8 benchmarks, for me, 4 is the key. That if we can get every subject, content of every subject, linked to the future for the students, for what that might mean for education, for careers, for training. But what Christy's been saying, that myth busting, so logistics isn't just white vans and warehouses, that construction isn't just male and muddy, there's so many other jobs. So a lot of the myth busting, get more people in front of students so that they find out what they could do. They're limited by what they see. So let's give them the opportunity to see many more different roles, get them inspired. So for me, it would be every school, every subject has a link with some business, some individual that can bring that subject to life and expand it. So it's sort of made it quite practical and realistic. So how are you going to use this? What value might this have for you in the future, or where might you be able to use it? I think would be really good. But then to make it as easy as possible for both the schools and the businesses. But here's a business that could come in and do this, or here's the school that would really love to engage with you. So just to see a lot more connections going on. But all that great practice, just hearing from Laura and Christy, just phenomenal. That it would be great to roll that out, and we're seeing more and more of that happening. But there's still more to happen. But also, Laura, you're talking about that virtual encounter. It's how does that happen? So, we've got to make sure that there's some sort of interaction, but then of course we've safeguarding issues with schools. So they're still finding solutions about how we can have an online encounter that is valuable for the student and has an impact, but is also delivered in a safe way. So there's lots of resources being developed at the moment that are looking at that, and we're continuing to work on how we can make that as useful and valuable to the students as possible.
Absolutely. And finally, Christy, just over to you. We heard a little bit about kind of wishes for the future, but what would you like to see for the next steps?
For us, I think for me personally and for Wincanton, we've learned in the last couple of years about what is good for us, and it's looking at things from for a long-term future. We need to kind of plant that seed in the idea of a 13-year-old's head, really, about logistics. We don't want to wait until they've made the decision to go to college or uni, and college and uni isn't for everybody, and there may be students out there that actually at the age of 18 will go into full-time employment, and career in logistics is a great opportunity for them at the age of 18. I think we kind of need to remember that in Northamptonshire, we're actually really, really lucky as a county. We're huge in logistics, and actually that's recognised. Obviously, we've got the Northampton Logistics Forum, we've got Charlotte with the partnership with the university and the businesses. So I probably think we're one of the luckiest counties in the UK with how we already engage with employers and businesses and have that link. For us, I think from Wincanton, we've learned a lot. We need to continue and just get better at what we're doing. We're already engaging with several secondary schools in the county. We're going in and doing these events. We can put on 1 hour, 2 hour, half a day, or a full day event for them. But what I'd quite like to see is schools do that return visit to us, because we can actually not necessarily take them in the warehouse because it's an operational area, but what we have got is what we call a gantry. It's a bridge, and you can look into all of our chambers and you can actually see for the first time what's happening with thousands of products that are going into Sainsbury's, and look at how many trucks, MHE trucks, mechanical handling equipment trucks and everything are moving around the warehouse. And that first time of looking in through the window is quite daunting. But and then if you even go in there and you realise how you're walking into a fridge, basically, it's really nice to see that the face of the student who's just for the first time says, "Oh my God." And then when they go to Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Morrison's or Asda or whoever with their parents, they'll go, "I know where that comes from. I've been there." And you know what? When they kind of put that link together, it doesn't make logistics such a horrible thought anymore. It makes it quite a positive thought and something that they might think of for the future as well. So for Wincanton, we want to continue what we're doing. We want to engage with students about potential careers, but we will also want to get into the SEN side and support. Just before COVID, unfortunately, I was working with Stacey Drake at the Daventry School, and we were taking Wincanton. We're going to take a lorry in, and we were going to talk about road safety to the students there, and we were making a full day. So the fire brigade were taking a fire engine, and the police were coming as well. So we've got all this planned, and literally about 2 weeks before COVID kind of cancelled everything. So we'd really like to continue that work, because yes, it is about, we want people to come and work for us, but there's also an awareness as well, and also to feel that we're still supporting the students that might not make it into the world of logistics. It doesn't mean to say that they don't want to see a lorry or they don't need to understand about road safety. So I'm keen, I'm passionate about it. I really like this bolt-on part of my job, and I don't really want that to stop, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and to be honest, when I started recording this, I thought I'm going to keep it shorter. It's actually turned into our longest discussion.
Oh, no.
It's because the stories are inspiring, and this for me is exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to call an end to it now. So I'd just like to, on behalf of myself and Track, say a huge thank you to all of you for joining us. And like we say, it's the end of a 3-part discussion, but for us, it's the start of a much bigger one. So a huge thank you to you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.